Why did Balaam refuse to go with the men of Moab? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, turn to Numbers chapter 22. We're going to be reading from verses 13 to 21. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers 22, beginning of verse 13. So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, "Go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to give me permission to go with you." And the princes of Moab rose and went to Balak and said, "Balaam refuses to come with us." Then Balak again sent princes, more numerous and more honorable than they. And they came to Balaam and said to him, "Thus says Balak, the son of Zippor, please let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will certainly honor you greatly, and I will do whatever you say to me. Therefore, please come, curse this people for me." Then Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, "Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do less or more. Now therefore, please, you also stay here tonight, that I may know more what the Lord will say to me." And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, If the men come to call you, rise and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you, that you shall do." So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. In this chapter and the next two after it, we have an amazing and rather peculiar story. Israel is situated in the plains of Moab, having just defeated the Amorites and the people of Bashan on the east side of the Jordan River, from the Arnon River on the border with Moab all the way up to the Sea of Galilee, and possessing that land. Balak, the king of Moab, is worried that Israel is too strong and will eventually come and attack him, perhaps as punishment for not allowing them to pass through Moab on their way north. So he, along with the Midianites, send word to Balaam, the son of Beor, that they wish to hire him to curse Israel. Balaam seemed to be a believer in the true God of heaven, having lived in a region where Abraham would have lived some 500 to 600 years before. He also seemed to be a prophet, though not a righteous man himself, as he seemed to be a greedy man. Balaam asked the men of Moab and Midian to remain with him a night, and in the morning he would tell them the word of the Lord. So that night God appeared to Balaam and told Balaam not to go with these men and not to curse Israel, for they were blessed. Coming to verse 13, Balaam speaks to the princes of Balak and tells them to go home, for the Lord has refused to give him permission to go with them and curse Israel. In this, Balaam showed that even though he had faults, he wasn't going to directly rebel here. The messengers went back to Balak, and I'm sure to Balak's surprise didn't return with Balaam, saying that Balaam refused to come. Now Balak should have believed what Balaam had said about the Lord not allowing Israel to be cursed, but no, he decided that he would play upon Balaam's greed and his seeming proclivity to respond to flattery by sending more to Balaam than just the princes that were sent before. He sent more honorable ones than he sent before. Perhaps then Balaam would come. Their message to Balaam was that Balak would do whatever it took to get Balaam to come and curse Israel. That is how desperate and how afraid Balak was of Israel, that he would make such an open-ended promise that could wind up costing him dearly. Balaam, though, was unmoved, knowing what the word of the Lord was. He said that Balak could give him his house full of silver and gold, but Balaam would not go beyond the word of the Lord to do less or more than what the Lord had said. At face value, this sounds good. Balaam will not go beyond what the Lord has said. But really, by his actions in verse 21, we know that Balaam was not really obeying God because he wanted to, but simply because he knew that he could not withstand God. In other words, his heart really wasn't in it. And if he went against God, he might lose his livelihood as someone who could speak as the oracles from God that came to pass. After Balaam had said these things, he did invite the princes of Moab to remain that night in order to see if any more words from the Lord would be revealed to him. And sure enough, God did appear to Balaam that night and gave him some more information. God told Balaam that if the men called upon him, that he could rise up and go with them, but he would only speak the words that the Lord speaks to him. Nothing more and nothing less. Verse 21 says that in the morning Balaam rose up, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Please note the order that Balaam did those things. He rose up, he saddled his donkey, and then went with the princes of Moab. This is important, for in our next lesson, the Lord is going to be angry with Balaam for going with these men, even though he gave Balaam permission to go. Why would the Lord be angry? We invite you to listen to the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers chapter 22, verses 22 to 30, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.